Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is our latest edition of Coping with COVID, the impact of the coronavirus and quarantine on your family and children. Today, we're joined with Mufti Farhan and Sister Saadia Yunus, a licensed family and
marriage and family therapist.
Sorry about that.
Yes.
So Mufti Farhan is a regular. Mufti Farhan is in charge of Children of Adam. He works with the Islamic Center of Long Island and Masjid al-Baqi. And we've been doing these events for the community. And as always, we welcome your comments. Feel free to comment on the right-hand side. As the comments and questions come in, we will answer your questions to the best of our ability. So today's topic is the impact of quarantine and the COVID-19 on families. So Sister Saadia is very well known in the community. She's a public speaker, an advocate, and she is well versed in the issues of the Muslim family life. Mufti Farhan, in his role, also is someone who people seek out for advice and counseling. So what I'm going to do is we'll start off with Sister Saadia. And the first question that I would have is my grandparents and parents witnessed the partition of India and Pakistan. Mm-hmm. And they mentioned to me as that being the single most traumatic or impactful moment in their life, something that they always look back on. Mm-hmm. I see this quarantine and COVID-19 as being the singular most traumatic issue or traumatic experience that I have ever seen in my life. Mm-hmm. What is the impact going to be on our children? And Saadia, you could start.
Yes. So first of all, assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. Thank you for having me on this program, and thank you for having these. It's really beneficial for the community, and it's so important for us to have these conversations. And I like that you started out with trauma. It's actually a specialized area that I've been trained in, and I really focus on because trauma has a widespread impact. And I can just imagine what the impact will be on our children. We can only really guess, but having experienced, traumatic events, it has an impact on mind, body, and soul. A very important book that I really recommend for everybody, especially now, is called The Body Keeps the Score. And it's basically focusing on how the body remembers trauma, even if the mind doesn't, right? So even if maybe it's been a few weeks now and we somehow get ourselves to a place of, okay, well, I'm dealing with this okay now, and I'm still worried and I'm stressed, but I've gotten myself to an okay place, the body still remembers the impact of that trauma. So these kids who are dealing with this situation and growing up in this are going to be impacted. Their minds, there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of worry and anxiety around them. So they absorb what goes on around them, particularly in their own homes and especially with their caregivers. So they're absorbing all of these negative emotions and difficult feelings and the tension in the air. So we can only imagine the impact of this trauma into their future.
Thank you, Sister Saadia. And Mufti Farhan, so in your role, I know that people seek you out and, you're always receiving messages, and I know you do daily events at 9 p.m. Have people or the youth or family members been reaching out to you and asking you how to cope with the current circumstances, or do you feel that family discord has increased right now?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most beneficent. Thank you, Sister Saadia, for joining us. Brother Ammad, thank you for hosting again. And thank you for all the viewers to be a part of this program that we've been doing. This is our third one. And we're hoping, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, betters the situation for all of us. But I think this is a good platform to keep in touch with all of you, inshallah. But Ammad, regarding your question, I do feel that, there is a sense of, isolation and this whole quarantine. You have time with family and all this. This is great that people have been hoping to spend this time, but because the situation is so difficult and there's so many uncertainties that are around, that isolation or quarantine sometimes is becoming very difficult for people to adjust to. I've been receiving a lot of calls related to how do I deal with my kids, because they're not used to having kids at home for 8 to 10 hours a day. Husbands and wives, want to spend that quality time with one another, but this is all of a sudden that's happened, that they have to be in front of their faces for 8 to 10 hours. It's difficult sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of issues with spouses and children. So for the past 2 nights, this is what I've been covering. I did disciplining our children. How do you discipline your children, like the 5 mistakes? Last night I was covering the rights and manners of family, like how do you treat your family. Yes, this is definitely a huge test. And tonight I will be covering the topic of anger. And Sister Saadia, thank you. I saw one of your articles online. I benefited a lot, and I took some notes to use tonight at 9. So look, this is what we got to do. We got to help one another out. And I'm seeing all of this happen a lot. There's a lot more rage and anger, not in a sense that they begin to hate one another, but they don't understand how to really, keep that family united and take care of this issue. It's definitely tough. Yes, we're getting a lot of questions, but we really, as a community, need to bond together and help one another.
Thank you very much, Mufti Farhan. So the first question that has come in, I'm going to address this to Sister Saadia. So are there any specific questions we should be asking our children concerning these times? And should we leave those questions open-ended, or should they be leading questions?
So yeah, it's definitely important to keep that line of communication with our children open and really check in with them to see what the impact they're having. And open-ended is always best, right? It's sitting with them and saying, hey, I really want to just check in with you, and I want to see how you're feeling, how you're dealing with this, what's going on with you. So it really gives them the space to talk about what they're feeling. We may expect them to feel scared, for example, and they may not. They may feel more angry. They may feel more frustrated, that they can't see their friends or they can't go out. So it's really not for us to impose our feelings onto them, but really give them the opportunity to open up and really provide that safe space as their parents, that they can say whatever it is that they want without dismissing them, without judging their emotions or judging what they're feeling, and really giving that space to them so that they continue to turn to us for support.
So Mufti Farhan, I'm going to ask you the same question, which is, are there specific questions that we should be asking our children? And again, should they be open-ended questions, or should they be leading questions?
So I think it's, even though with a very difficult situation that the Ummah is going through now, may Allah make it easy for all of us, I do feel that this is also a great opportunity to open up a lot of doors for our kids. So for example, for those people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed with health and wealth, it's a great opportunity for us to bring forth the aspect of charity in front of our kids. You see a lot of hunger across the globe. You see people, like with my own organization, Children of Adam, what we are doing in Pakistan and India and Bangladesh and Iraq and like 4 different countries. Even though my kids are too young to understand, but I'm creating that feeling within their own selves that, what, we got to do something. We are not just quarantined in our homes and we have all our food packed up and everything like that, but really we need to share with others. So I think it's a great opportunity to mold our children into caring individuals, people who will begin to care for people globally, because now we have grown so much, and especially through social media, things have come so close in front of us. Things happen overseas hours and hours away, and in a blink of a second we have that news. So how do I become a part of something good for the community? And that is something that I think should be an open discussion with our children. I know that they must be going through a lot. They're not able to see their friends. They have to be with their parents. They're doing homeschooling. It's tough for kids, but to make it more powerful, spiritual, inspirational for our children, allow them to feel the good that they can take from this isolation or quarantine, and how they can strengthen themselves, maybe send messages to their uncles and aunts that they have not been able to reach out to their elders, or someone who they have not been able to reach out to, not only messages, but write a letter or something, meaning engaging our children in a sense of care for others is very, very important, especially maybe if you know doctors or physicians or policemen or anything who are like sort of first responders in this situation. Allow them to reach out to them and show them that they appreciate what they're doing, so that they know that we're doing something as a community.
No, thank you very much. I mean, this is a subject that I think a lot of parents are coping with. One of the questions that I came across was, even with my own parents, I haven't seen my mother or my grandmother in what, 3+ weeks, and the impact, as obviously my grandmother is up there in age, and every day that you can visit, you hold that very special, and the fact that it's like you just feel this constant stress, right? And how do you, in switching from children to adults, is when it comes to interaction between relatives and family members, I mean, how should people communicate? I mean, this type of environment is different than hugging your parents or hugging your siblings or your relatives. So, Sister Saadia, how can people cope? I mean, humans are physical creatures, right?
Right. And it makes it so challenging, especially when you can't see them physically and you can't give them that hug. It's really teaching us to be, more creative in our ways of communication, and really to use our words more than ever. And it's difficult for people who aren't words people, right? There's more of that texting and voice messages, FaceTime. It's really about that kind of communication is what we have to kind of utilize at this time. Kind of thinking about the 5 love languages, you mentioned physical touch. Yes, definitely. But there's also, we can use acts of service, and we can express love through acts of service. Maybe sending them, a meal, even though we can't take them physically a meal, we can send a meal their way. Gifts is another way to show love. You can send them a gift online, right? You can send a gift to their house, or something, different ways of expressing that love. It's not only about using words and using language, because we are limited at this time, but it really requires us to be creative.
Thank you. I mean, that's very helpful. Mufti Farhan, with children not being able to go to school and becoming isolated, do you think that this will have a lasting effect on them? I mean, in terms of their personality?
I think it will, because this is something, um, the impacts will be visible afterwards, but just assessing the situation, I do feel that this is going to last for a long time. And that's why, as a community, as individual parents, everyone need to assess the needs of their children and to make sure that they get them ready. And I know there are a lot of interesting and good questions that just came out, and we should reach them, as like, how do we deal with children? Do we give them that information? Should we provide them that information all the times? News updates, watch, meaning it's all up to parents and seeing how their children take this stress and situation. Because I think for many parents, and I always believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed parents with such a feeling that they can just feel the emotions and movement of their children, and they know what's going on. I still remember my childhood. I come from school, I'm trying to hide and stuff like that. Mom is like, Farhan, I was like, oh man, she caught me again. Like, this is how parents are. Allah bless parents with that feeling. So every parent has that, strength that Allah bestows upon them. And I think every parent should gauge their children of how they're feeling, and I would say that, as I said last night as well, 2 nights ago, that look, don't compare your children with other kids. Stop, looking for perfection in your children. Be the role model that you want for your children. Be that example. Do as I say, not as I do, parent. Don't be that individual. Like, that you have respect and dignity. Your children also have respect. So I think all of these things need to be considered in order for our children to really be strong enough to come out of this COVID and this entire crisis and live a normal life. But I do think that it will be impacted. But that's what I'm saying again and again, is to maybe give them some sort of inspiration that they will take from this whole crisis. They will come out to humanity, more caring for people. Let them come out of this entire crisis and a difficult situation stronger in faith and stronger in akhlaq and mannerism.
I mean, Sister Sadi, so one question that just came in is, how do you explain the importance of social distancing to household members who just don't get it?
This is one that's on a lot of people's minds, right? You can't make people do something that they don't want to do, right? It's really about them making those choices as adults, but it can make an impact how we communicate it to them. And so a lot of it is first kind of assessing, how am I communicating it to them? That's really all I have control over. I don't have control over whether they're going to practice that social distancing or not, but I do have control over how I approach them and how I express that to them. So focusing on that, making sure, as Gottman, the relationship expert, always tells us, is soften your startup. So if you come out with, what, why are you going out, and you come out kind of like in an attacking way, they're probably not going to be receptive to what you're saying. So it's really about softening your startup and, beginning in a soft way to be like, you know what, I'm really concerned, or, any other way that's kind of soft and it really expresses your concern and not criticizing, because we're human beings. And if we feel criticized, we're going to automatically defend, right? That's what criticism leads to. Criticism leads to defensiveness. So if we don't want to face the defensiveness and we want the person to be receptive to our message, we will work on not sounding critical to them and to make it sound as if, like we're concerned about them. We're really concerned about the situation. And we're, out of a lens of curiosity, like, hey, I wonder why you're not following this and what's going on with you and what is your thinking process? Like, help me to understand. So softening the startup and trying to steer clear of criticism or anything that sounds like it.
Okay, I mean, that's very helpful. Mufti Farhan, this question that just came in, I'd like if you could answer is, should we redirect the thoughts of our children if they're angry or if they're upset? Questions around, if a kid misses eating out, is it a good time to talk about their blessings that they already have compared to others, or is that dismissing their feelings? I mean, how can we bring their emotions and give them at the same time making sure they're grateful?
Better person to answer that question, because she deals with that a lot.
You can switch if you guys want.
No, but I'll share my thoughts, and inshallah she can go give the concluding answer to that. But yeah, I do think it's important that we do talk to our kids about the privileges and blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them, without making them feel superior to others, but to make them as grateful as they can, and that is something which is very important. Not because you're privileged or honored to have this, but you are blessed that Allah has given you this. And I think this is one of the fruits that I truly feel out of this entire thing that is happening. Even with my kids being 7, 5, and 4, I talk to them about this, and I tell them this all the time. And I said, look, this is a blessing for so many of us, and I think it is. Yes, it's dismissing their feelings. Yes, they're not able to go eat. They're not, but again, realistically, our children are very smart. Alhamdulillah, they are blessed. They are learning a lot of crazy stuff, very good stuff, in their schools and stuff that they're doing. But when it comes to Islam, sometimes we shy away in speaking the truth to them. But I feel that gauging the intellect of our children, we should have these conversations with them to instill inside of them that gratitude and that happiness and thankfulness.
Thank you very much. And Sister Saadia, I'd love to hear your perspective on this as well.
Sure, definitely. So there's an amazing parenting expert out there. I recommend all of his books for every parent, Dr. Dan Siegel. And so I've just been finishing up his book on wholehearted parenting. And I love his concept of connect, then redirect. So what you want to do with your child is connect first and then redirect them. So when, for example, a teen is like, okay, I'll give you an example, because my kids are all ages too, subhanAllah, and I have 2 teens, so 14, 13, 7, and 3. And so one of the teens was like, oh, this is going to be the worst spring break ever, okay? And so our instinct may be like, no, astaghfirullah, or like we have to be grateful. And, we immediately want to go to that. But what that does is it does dismiss their feelings. So we want to connect with them first. So it really takes us as parents to take a little bit of a deep breath before we really respond to them, because we want to choose how to respond instead of reacting to it, right? We want to be proactive parents instead of reactive. So in that moment, I wanted to say, like, let's be grateful. But I was like, you know what? Yeah, it is going to suck. It is going to be horrible, because that's the words that she used. So using those same words, it is going to be bad. And so you just give a pause. You validate them. You validate their feelings. Whatever they're feeling is real, because feelings are valid and real. Feelings are never wrong. So saying that, yeah, it is going to be bad, and it's validating her, it's helping her feel understood and heard. And then you kind of pause for a minute, because you give them a chance also to be like, oh, wow, I was validated. Now I can actually use my rational brain. Because Dr. Dan Siegel, he talks about the different parts of the brain, right? Where immediately it's the emotional brain. It was her emotional brain that made her think, okay, this is going to be a horrible spring break. You have to react to you have to connect to the emotional brain first. You have to connect to that and to be like, yeah, it is going to be bad. And then now she's a bit calm, he or she, they're a bit calm. And now you can go to that rational brain. Well, what can we do to make the spring break better? What can we think about the blessings that we have, so that we can, do something? Maybe we can't travel to the museums, but we can look at the virtual museums online. And so now you've connected, and you can redirect them to the more positive thinking that you want them to have.
Interesting.
So, brother, I'm just going to stop you for 1 second. So we have a lot of brothers and sisters who are watching. So, guys, this is a great opportunity for us to actually have your questions answered through Sister Saadia, mashallah, who is a licensed. Now, Brother Ammad, you have to complete the sentence. Marriage, family.
Marriage and family.
Good. So this is great. So, guys, this is something that we're doing for the entire community, and we really want your input, and we really want your participation, and see, inshallah, how you can really take back something productive from these gatherings. So, alhamdulillah, this is what we are trying to do as a community. And me and Brother Ammad, we actually have a lot of these conversations off this internet and camera, and we talk about this, that this entire situation these past 10 days have taught us a lot of lessons. A lot of good things have come up. We have come up with a lot of strategic ideas and things as community that we need to do. And sometimes we do feel that we may have let down some of our community members too in certain situations. But we do have to take the positive. Whatever we have been able to do, we are grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever we are not able to do, we ask Allah for forgiveness for that we have not been able to. But truly, inshallah, as a community, we're growing, we're helping, and inshallah, we're going to be much stronger than ever, inshallah. So if you are with us right now and you want to ask some questions, please feel free. We also have a link, Brother Ammad. Do you have that link to send to people so that they can come on screen as well?
Okay, we can do that.
Yeah, we have that too. So we really want participation from the community. That this is for you guys, inshallah. It's not just that we have views and stuff, but we really want to answer your questions so that you feel comfortable. I know a lot of this situation. May Allah keep all of us healthy for those who are in this difficult situation. But for those who, mashallah, who are blessed with health, those who are blessed with wealth, the situations that they're facing in this time is family and children. I'm telling you, this is what's happening. It's not that they're afraid they're going to run out of their food or they're going to run out of money. Alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed them, but the issue is family and children. So I think this is a great opportunity for all of us to truly participate and ask questions, inshallah, as well.
So Mufti Farhan, we had a question that just came in, and that is, how can we maintain our sanity? What steps can we take?
I'm going to ask them if they're married or not. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to be in so much trouble. So look, with all these things that are happening, and I know that we as individual, there's always a time that comes to us that we need a break, and we need to cope with all these things that is happening along with us. Sometimes it's the stress outside. Maybe sometimes it's the children. It's the spouse, or maybe it's the elderly parents, or anyone else that's part of your life it just becomes overwhelming to many of us to take care of all these things. So I think as individuals, we need to take a step back and realize that uh, from a spiritual point, not as a clinical, and inshallah Sadia will be able to help us in that point, but as spiritual point is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never puts you in a situation or a burden that you cannot bear. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never put you in a situation as an individual that you as a person cannot bear. This is the wa'da of Allah. This is the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So no matter how difficult the test is, know that Allah knows me more than I know my own self. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never try me or test me in a situation that I don't have strength, or Allah has not given me that strength. And we should always realize that Allah mentions in the Quran, Inna ma'al usri yusra, Inna ma'al usri yusra. With every single difficulty, there are avenues and avenues of ease and comfort from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah mentions in another place of the Quran that there are conditions that you may think are sharrul lakum wa huwa khairul lakum, but they turn out to be much more blessed for you. And there are so many prophetic traditions, examples from the life of the Prophet ﷺ and Sahaba, which shows that it felt that everything was finished. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala turned those moments to be the most beautiful moment for the Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'in. So I think that's the positivity as a believer. I'm talking about spiritual points. I'm not talking about the clinical point of it, but spiritual point of it, brothers and sisters, is as believers, we got to get our heart strong. We got to get our tawakkul strong. Yes, we need to take care of all the responsibilities and make sure that we're following guidelines of our experts in all particular fields. But as a Muslim, we can't lose trust. We can't lose hope. We can't lose tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even for a blink of an eye, nothing will happen without the amr and order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think this is one of those great points of tawakkul and trust with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Reflecting over our lives, seeking Allah's forgiveness, coming towards tawakkul and trust with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think this is a great opportunity for us to maybe synchronize, maybe rejuvenate that feeling inside all of us, inshallah.
So one question that just came in, which is, and Sister Saadia, I'll push that question to you, is how to specifically explain the coronavirus, what it is, how it affects you, the steps you have to take for safety to really young kids, specifically preschoolers.
Yeah, it can be challenging, but you'd be surprised how many resources are out there. It really is just to kind of just Google, like, how do I talk to young kids about coronavirus? And you'll get so much. There's so much information. There are graphics, right? There's stories that have come out that you can really read to them about it. And it really is just giving them, using very simple sentences, simple words, and just knowing that they may not even get it, right? Like they may not understand. Just my 3-year-old was telling me today, what I was just telling, and they listen to every conversation. So we think that they're not paying attention, but they're listening. So I was just telling my husband that our physicians have started to do like telehealth. And I was like, oh, I'll get to see this doctor. And I named her doctor. And then she said, no, but we can't see him because he's sick. And so she's listening to these, she's 3 years old, but she's listening to the conversations about how we can't see people because of this sickness. So she thought we couldn't see everybody because everybody's sick. And so it was really just understanding that they may not get it, but it's just explaining to them in as simple words as we can, and really just hearing them out too, what they're feeling about it. But there's a lot of resources out there, having them draw artwork about it. What does the virus look like? What you're not able to see grandma, so why don't we draw a picture of like your feelings, and what do you feel that you can't feel, you can't see your grandma. So being able to allow them to express how they feel also, instead of just telling them all the time, giving them a space to express.
So we have a bunch of questions that are coming in now pretty quickly. So I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up. Mufti Farhan, this question is for you, which is, what dua should be read during the specific time to strengthen the ties of kinship with everyone and the family stuck together in a house?
So I think more than dua, it's your practical actions that are required for your mannerism, right? You're not going to be able to only better your relationship by dua. I think that's great. But if you're asking for a specific dua, that will, you know, strengthen ties. And I think it's us that we need to take those steps forward and be that person who makes that connection. You know, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, and of course, depending on times, he said there are two footsteps that are the most beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The one is that are taken towards the masjid to make salah, and now of course the masjids are closed, so please don't do that. The second one is that when you take those footsteps to your relatives to join blood ties and kinship. So be that individual who sends that first message and says that salam, and you haven't contacted someone. So, you know, it takes that inner strength for one's own self more than dua. Yes, you may need that dua inside of yourself that, oh Allah, give me enough strength that I can fulfill the haqq of my relatives. But there is no prophetic dua that I'm going to make to strengthen myself to make those relationships strong. Yes, there are dua at certain times, you know, in certain situations, but when it comes to strengthening the ties of kinship and with every family member stuck together, I think it's about respecting and being that person who keeps other in comfort. Rasulullah sallallahu akhlaq and manners were such that once people saw the Prophet sallallahu at once, they were being full of awe. But once they got to know him, they loved him so much that they couldn't leave him, right? That was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That was his presence. Be that individual that people would love to be with. That was the mannerism of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu when you study the life of Sahaba. That people wouldn't leave his company. People would just want to sit with him for hours because they just loved him because he was so good. So I think when it comes to, you know, how do I make those ties in relationship, I think we have to be that individual who should become that first step should always come from our side, inshallah.
So what we're going to do is we actually have a live question coming on. So we're actually going to bring someone on board right here. Brother Raza will be joining us to ask us a question.
How do I make those,
and he's on board. Raza, assalamu alaikum. If you can, just you're on with Sister Saadia and Mufti Farhan. If you can, ask your question. So what we're going to do is we actually have a live question. Can he hear us? So we're actually going to bring someone on board right here. Brother Raza will be joining us. I think he's watching on Facebook instead of.
I think he has a delay. It sounds like a delay.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Walaikum salam. If you can, ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum. First of all, thank you so much for doing this program. It's very beneficial for not only myself but for all the viewers watching. Quick question I had in times like this. A lot of people are very strong with their iman, and you know they're very strong mentally with mental health, and during normal times, something like this, you know, if your iman is strong or if your mental health is strong, somebody to talk to, whether it's spiritually or whether it's about mental health, how can someone touch with either one of you, or like, you know, people can go live with their doctor and, like, you know, go over stuff about their health? Is there a way somebody can reach out to one of you guys about stuff like this as well?
So you know what? Well, let's have Sister Saadia address that question first.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great point. Like, how can people reach out to us, you know, if they do need the help? And so I'm offering online therapy only at the moment, and it's available to anyone in the state of New York. They can contact me via my website. It's saadiazyunus.com. And my cell phone, you can text, you can call, and that number is on my website as well, 631-213-1236. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. I mean, they're everywhere. They can just contact me or message me anywhere and really set up a session. I'm offering really low fees at this time. I know a lot of people are going through financial difficulties. So anybody who's even thinking about, hey, maybe I should speak to a therapist, you know, I'm dealing with anxiety, and we all are. There's a lot of anxiety and fear. So don't let anything hold you back from really reaching out and getting the help that you deserve.
Thank you very much, Reza, for your question. And we're going to go back to our audience questions. They're coming in pretty quickly. So, so one of the questions that came in just now, and Mufti Farhan, I'll ask you this question. We're hearing about all the deaths and depressing news. How do you make our children understand that, like, all the death that's going on around us, and janaza with 8 people, bodies burning instead of being buried, etc. So I mean, this is pretty this is pretty graphic stuff. So how can we make our children understand this, or should we make them understand this?
So again, it all depends upon the level of maturity of our children, and it should not be something that we are talking about at all times in our homes. And I think it's important for every parent to assess their children individually and be able to gauge what sort of conversations that they can have with them. And again, it's the reality of life that's there. But as Sister Saadia mentioned so perfectly, is that we really need to make sure that we make the kids understand through emotions. We get them to feel that they are being understood before we get our words to them. So when it comes to giving them the news of people passing away and bodies burning, I think one of the biggest things that I feel as the spiritual guide in this is that we shouldn't teach our children that this is an adhab and punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think this is a big thing from many people. There's a difference between an adhab and ibtila. Adhab as a punishment and ibtila as a test or a trial. So I think that sort of difference needs to be created. We mentioned this in one of our previous programs, where one of the community members had lost a family member, and all the people around the community started saying Allah buri maut se bachaye and stuff like that, meaning they were saying in Urdu that may Allah protect us from a bad death, not knowing that these people who are passing away in this epidemic or situation, pandemic, is shaheed. So I think that sense of clarity and understanding must be made. But the larger picture, more than the janazas or burning of bodies and cremations and things, which is a more fiqhi and like Islamic ruling of should we do that or should we not do that, is that permissible or not? The point is that our children should understand that this is not an adhab or a punishment of Allah, but we should take this as a means of trial for all of us of how we will pass this test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
As we're approaching
in this difficult time, how will I pass the test of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? All of
that was weird. I think we're having a little bit of a delay with Mufti Farhan. Sorry about that. So as we're approaching, we have about 15 to 20 more minutes left. Sister Saadia, I'm gonna give you 2 questions, rapid fire. First question is a bit off topic, but one of the questions that came in are, what are some books do you recommend when it comes to the subject of raising children?
Okay, so all of Dr. Dan Siegel's books, definitely. He writes about one title is Parenting from the Inside Out. So it really teaches us how to have a greater awareness of ourselves. And he calls it Mindsight, where it's really about having insight into ourselves and then empathy for others, right? And insight as to why I overreact to things or why certain things that my kids say is maybe a trigger. So I have that understanding, and then I'm able to be empathetic to my children. So definitely Parenting from the Inside Out. His other one is, I think I'm saying the title wrong, but The Wholehearted Child. So it teaches you really how to be with your children. So definitely all of his are excellent. Gottman has one on the emotion. I'm not sure what it is, but he has one on parenting. You can always message me later. I can give you the actual titles, but I have a lot of recommendations when it comes to parenting, and it really teaches you how to connect with your child, and then having an awareness of yourself, like why I overreact to certain things and how to change that cycle.
And then one more question, which is, what activities do you recommend for families that are not really close and are now stuck in the house together?
Okay, and that's a great one, right? Because there's so many out there. Some can be just as simple as, playing games together, right? Board games or puzzles. It can be simple about really finding out what people really enjoy, right? We're learning about each other. One thing is, it's like 25 questions. There's actually something called like a chat pack where it has like 100 questions that you really take out and you really ask each other. And sometimes it really is about going that simple. Online, you can find so many. So basically, it's just questions like, if you could travel anywhere right now, where would you go? And simple things like that to really just get to know each other and spend that kind of time together. There is a board game called Better Me, and so it's a beautiful one. My family and we sit down and we play it, and a lot of it is really deep questions, like what does your inner voice say to you? And then it has action items like, let's have a goal this week that we'll all try to accomplish, and then whoever accomplishes it, they get a prize at the end of the week. And so that can be a really good game to play as a family.
Okay, that's excellent. Excellent. Mufti Farhan, this question that just came in, I'd like if you could answer this one, which is being home with family and kids. What is the best way to start teaching young kids about Islam, and where should they even start?
I think this is so great, and I think a lot of people, meaning different countries, and I admire some of the work that they have done, especially in England and South Africa. They have developed a lot of curriculums for our children to really start off with something. One of the curriculums that I would suggest is something called Safar Academy, SAFAR, Safar Academy. They have an amazing lineup from book 1 to book 7. Every book covers about 5 different topics related to portions of Quran and Hadith and Akhlaq and Sirat and morals and ethics. And it slowly builds a child. And I feel that if parents begin to cover that at home with their children, by the time that they finish high school, they actually have basic all the do's and don'ts, and they're good enough to have like a basic studies of everything that they need to know as halal and haram in Islam. So I think that could be a very good start for kids and parents going through the Safar Academy. That's also very, very good. There are also some curriculums as Iqra and other ones which are done locally in America as well. But Safar Academy has done an amazing job. They have their stuff online as well. I would also recommend that if you can, there are certain Sira books which can be started with the family and children. They're not very deep books. Inshallah, I will share those links in the comment of this video when we finish, inshallah. So for those who are watching, can always go back to those comments and inshallah check the links. That some of the Sira books that you can start reading at home every single day to sort of create that love of the Prophet ﷺ in their lives, because for many of our kids, it's just about, oh, there was a man who was a messenger, but there's no personal connection. So I think these are 2 good things that we can begin. Have some time for recitation of Quran. Don't make it very difficult for kids. Make it something which is fun and pleasing and comfortable for our kids.
Mm-hmm. So, jumping topics, Sister Saadia, this question came in from a user specific. It came in privately for you, which the question was, how should we deal with behavioral issues with younger children? Should we be lenient and let things slide, given the stress that they're probably under with being locked up in the house, not going to school, etc.?
Okay, that's a great question. And you really get all the answers in Dan Siegel's book, Back to That. But it really is about, no, not letting things necessarily slide, because, that balance is important, right? It's about understanding what they're going through, but it's also about maintaining, I don't like to use the word control, but maintaining discipline, right, in the household. So you want to understand why they're acting out in the moment, right? And maybe in the moment, for example, your toddler is throwing a tantrum, or your teen is not listening when you're saying, get off the screens. And so maybe in that moment is not the time to really explain or try to find out what's going on. At that time, it's, yes, setting the limits and being able to set that through, and then later on kind of sitting down with them and trying to understand what was happening. Like, what was happening when you were throwing the tantrum? What were you feeling? And what was going on with you when you weren't listening and you weren't getting off the screen? Like, what was happening? Help me to understand, right? And so what I tell parents is, to prevent all of this, right, and to try to make it a more streamlined process, is to really set your discipline plan between husband and wife, right? If it's a two-parent household, to decide that behind closed doors, right? And then to have like a family meeting with the children in which you present to him what those rules are, present to them what those rules are. For example, and I always tell parents, this is something that can really work, is to say, we will tell you to do something once. If you do not listen, we'll give you one reminder. Right? With that one reminder, we'll tell you, this is your reminder. We told you to get off screens, or we told you to, it's dinner time, or we told you this, whatever. If you don't listen with that reminder, then there will be a consequence, and this is the consequence. And the best consequences are related to the grievance or the crime, not something completely opposite of that. And again, that takes a long time to kind of go through. You can always set up a session and I can help you specifically through that with your situation, but it really is about trying to find the balance between connecting with your child and still setting those limits within the home.
Got it. So we actually have a question that I don't know if you guys can read the question on the screen, but this just came in from a Facebook user. And Mufti Farhan, maybe since it's your turn, you can answer this. What are the best actions to do with family according to the traditions of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam?
I thought you were going to ask the ice cream question.
That's next.
So I'd say ask your physician regarding that. So regarding the actions to do with the Prophet with family according to the traditions of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, I suggest that start with something simple. One of the most beautiful things that we can all do is to bring the prophetic dua and supplication in everything we do in our household. Start with those actions. I know we're not going out or in our homes now, but teach that to your children. When you leave your home, this is your dua. When you enter, this is your dua. I remember when I was a student, I was studying, I was sitting with the Sheikh. His name is Sheikh Nazar Rahman, who was one of the biggest and one of those great scholars in Pakistan. People come from all over the world to ask his advice for dua and supplications and Quranic recitations. A man came, and usually every Desi household has that same problem, is either it's the jinn or it's some relatives who did some black magic on you. So the guy said, I have some issues and stuff like that. What do you think I should do? I have nazar, my family relatives are doing jadoo and jinns and stuff on me. So I remember the Sheikh said something so beautiful. He said, Bhai, do you know the dua of entering your house? He says, no. He says, do you know the dua of leaving your house? He says, no. He said, then what do you expect your house to have if you're not reading dua? Meaning, who's going to be your companion? The Prophet ﷺ said, anyone who enters their house with the dua and salam, and before eating they say Bismillah, the shayateen says, we have no room to stay, we have nothing to eat, and they leave that household. So I would suggest parents to start creating the prophetic supplications and sunnah in the life of your children. When they're wearing their clothing, teach them this is dua. Paste that on their walls where they're changing or somewhere. When they're looking at the mirror, what was the dua of the Prophet ﷺ? It's so beautiful dua, and teach them the meanings of it. The Prophet ﷺ said, whenever you look at the mirror, make this dua. Allahumma anta hassanta khalqi fa hassan khuluqi. Oh Allah, as you have beautified me externally, oh Allah, beautify my character as well. Meaning this is your child reading every time they look at the mirror, or they're changing clothing, or they're waking up. So I think one of the things that we can begin, best actions, is to start bringing prophetic supplications in your house. I think this would be the best thing that you can do for your children and for their futures as well.
Again, we're coming on our close, and we have about 7 minutes left. So maybe we'll do one more question, and this question we'll do for Sister Saadia, which is, So not all children and teens respond to stress in the same way. What is your recommendation whether to have, I guess, the children watching the news and updates on COVID-19? I know that we were having a conversation today at the office, virtual office, and one of it was that one of our company leaders' mother was rushed to the hospital with what they thought was potentially a heart attack. And the cardiologist came in, took one look at her, and said, "Can I ask you a question? Have you been watching CNN, Fox News, or MSNBC today?" And she said, "Yes, I have been watching all day." And he said, "Okay, your heart is fine. You have anxiety." And so these are adults. I mean, we all get it. We all get it. At least I do. I can imagine what the children are going through. So, what are your thoughts, Saadia, in terms of how dealing with children, and what amount of knowledge you want to share, and the influence of which is now reality TV?
Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought up that point about anxiety, and because even us as adults, right, there's only so much that we can handle. And so what is probably like best practice is to really, anybody, whether it's another adult that we're speaking to or a child, is really checking in with them, and even ourselves, is checking in with them, in with ourselves to see where we are at. Like, are we in the headspace to really take in any more news at that point? And so it's really connecting with the other person to be like, I heard some new news about COVID-19. Are you in the headspace to hear this? So it's giving the other person the power to say, no, you know what? I'm really feeling really anxious right now. I don't want to hear anything else about it. We have to be respectful even in all the WhatsApp groups and Facebook messages and these kinds of things, that we just feel that we have the power to send whatever messages or send whatever news story that we want, without really thinking about the impact on the other side. There's a lot of people who have pre-existing mental health challenges, right? And anxiety, OCD, PTSD. And so this situation is giving everybody, symptoms of all of those. Just imagine the people who've already been dealing with this. And so it's really about being considerate of the person on the other side, child, adult, ourselves, and to really ask them, like, are you in the headspace to really hear about this news story or the death toll or any of this? And they may say, no, I'm not. And it's about respecting that. And so it even comes to asking our kids, I'd like to let you know a little bit about what's going on today, with the coronavirus, you want to hear about it. And they might, no, I've heard so much about it, I don't want to hear about it. If we feel like it's something really important, then we can say that. You know what? It's all about communication and how we communicate it. So it's saying, you know what, I really think it's important for you to be a little bit of aware of what's going on. So let me know when you're ready to hear about it. And they can let you know, maybe later on in the day, maybe, when first thing in the morning, maybe at night, nobody wants to hear it because you aren't able to sleep or you have sleeping problems. And so it's really checking in with the other person, checking in with yourself, taking breaks, from the news and all the information, and really assessing mentally how all of this is impacting me, and navigating it with that respect and consideration for others.
So I'm going to do something a little unusual. We're actually getting a lot of requests, Sister Saadia, for your website. If you can, maybe you could share your email address, and Mufti Farhan, you could share your email address as well, because we're coming up against the close of this episode, and I just want to make sure that for those that want to continue the conversation, that they're able to continue the conversation with you guys. So, Sister Saadia, if you could just repeat your contact info that you wanted to share earlier, and then Mufti Farhan, if you could do the same.
Sure, definitely. So my website is Saadia Z Yunus, and the Saadia with 2 A's. So it's SAADIAZ and YUNUS. And so SaadiaZYunus.com. All my information is there. My email address is info@SaadiaZYunus.com. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram, everywhere there. My cell phone number that you can text and that you can call is 631-213-1236. So feel free to reach out about anything, whether if you want to set up a therapy session, if you have any questions at all, if you need information for resources. There's a lot of anxiety and fear and stress and suicidal ideation, please reach out about absolutely anything at all.
And Mufti Farhan, if you could, can you send quickly give us your email address as well?
Sure, it's Mufti MUFTI.FARHAN Farhan at ICLINY.org.
Okay, and then we have one final question, and I will ask that question to the both of you. And the question is, talk about your last question: how to cope up with the guilt about not being able to perform normal work or parenting duties during quarantine, especially for healthcare workers. And I'll let Sister Saadia, I guess you start with this one.
Okay, so guilt is a very difficult emotion, and it really is about releasing all of the guilt and letting it go, because it really is unfair, because you're human and you're doing the absolute best that you can do. And so what guilt tells you is like, oh, I should be doing more, I could be doing more. Can you? And so it's really about discerning between, okay, could I really be doing more? Okay, let me try to work on that, right? Let me, work on some self-improvement. Let me see what else I can do to manage my time to get things done. Or is it the negative, demeaning, putting yourself down guilt, which is unfair and which is something to release? And what we need most right now, every single one of us, is self-compassion. And it's really about being compassionate with yourself. And to say that I'm going through a lot right now and I'm dealing with a lot, especially healthcare workers, right? And so it's being compassionate to yourself, being kind to yourself, and then just picking yourself up. Maybe I didn't do as much as I could have done yesterday, but that's okay. I'm going through a lot. I'm under a lot of stress, and I'll try again tomorrow. But it's having that kindness and really lifting yourself up so that you feel good enough to be able to do something later on. What guilt does is it really brings you down and demoralizes you so that you don't even have the energy to do something better. So the self-compassion is the antidote to guilt.
Mufti Farhan, if you could give some.
I think I wouldn't be able to add anything to that. I think that's well said, inshallah. And I think we're almost above our time as well, so we don't want to hold our audiences further as well. But thank you everyone for joining, and thank you, Brother Ammad, for making this happen, man.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you for everyone who watches, B, who wants to join and able to share their talents with the community. So, as long as people are willing to come on and people continue to watch, we'll keep on doing this, right? Inshallah. Mufti Farhan, if you could you help just close our
Sure.
event today with a dua, please?
Sure. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun al-mursaleen. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Ameen, ameen, ameen. Birahmatika ya arhamar rahimin.
Ameen. Jazakallah khair, Sister Saadia, for coming on. Mufti Farhan, thank you very much for joining us once again. And inshallah, we will see you in a couple of days, inshallah.
Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Jazakallah khairan.